The secret behind America's power. Why the whole world fears U.S. sanctions. Sanctions are a form of economic punishment that has existed for a long time in the history of international relations. However, as the world's most powerful superpower, the United States has elevated the imposition of sanctions to a whole new level. From the Cold War to modern conflicts, Washington has used sanctions as a tool to achieve its political objectives. So what has made sanctions such a common diplomatic tool? And does the US truly hold a special privilege in wielding this powerful weapon? Let's explore this right now. The reason the US has held unique power for over a century is because it has the world's most robust economy. In 2023, this number reached $27.36 trillion, accounting for nearly 25% of global GDP. This underscores America's central role in the global economic system, far surpassing countries like China, Germany, and Japan. Not only does it have enormous economic scale, but with a population of 335 million, the US also boasts a per capita GDP of $8.138, ranking among the highest worldwide. American households spent up to $21.82 trillion in 2023, accounting for 77% of GDP on daily activities, exceeding the combined spending of the European Union, China, and India. This demonstrates that Americans tend to spend a lot, especially in sectors like technology, healthcare, financial services, and entertainment. Moreover, the United States has the most developed financial system in the world, with Wall Street serving as the center of the stock market, hosting prominent exchanges like the NYSE and Nasdaq. In 2023, the US continued to be the largest stock market globally, with a market capitalization reaching $52.6 trillion, nearly 4.6 times that of the second largest market, China, at $11.5 trillion. With a stable and strong economy, the US dollar has become a safe haven for investors, especially during global crises. It is not only the national currency of the United States but also the most powerful and important currency in the world. Earning the title of global reserve currency, it accounts for up to 58% of central banks' international reserves worldwide, 3 times that of the euro. Furthermore, the dollar plays a central role in the international financial system, dominating 80% of foreign exchange transactions. Even 70% of foreign debt is issued in US dollars, 3 times the amount issued in euros and 30 times that issued in renminbi. Additionally, many essential commodities such as oil, gold, and various critical raw materials are traded in US dollars on the global market. This means that even non-US countries must use the greenback in major transactions, granting this currency a special status. Another advantage of the United States is its leadership in science and technology. With a network of top universities, research institutes, and tech companies, prestigious institutions like MIT, Stanford, and Harvard have trained numerous outstanding scientists and engineers, contributing significant advancements across scientific fields from artificial intelligence to biotechnology. The US is also home to leading tech companies such as Microsoft, IBM, Nvidia, and Intel. These corporations not only lead in semiconductor research and development but also shape the way people use electronic devices daily. Even modern weapons require electronic components, with core technologies controlled by the United States. Companies, or groups. Regarding sanction procedures, U.S. sanctions are managed and enforced by the Office of Foreign Assets Control, OFAC. This office collaborates with other agencies, including the Department of State, to identify, investigate, and impose fines on sanction violations, oversee arms sales, and provide aid. OFAC is also responsible for managing other sanctions licenses for individuals. Next is Syria, a country that the US has explicitly labeled as a state sponsor of terrorism since 1979, which has led to unilateral sanctions against this nation, particularly under George W. Bush. He intensified sanctions against Bashar al-Assad's government for pursuing weapons of mass destruction and supporting armed groups like Hamas and Hezbollah. By 2011, after riots and civil war erupted in Syria, the U.S. imposed additional economic sanctions on the Assad administration. These measures focused on oil, finance, and international trade sanctions aimed at cutting off resources to the Syrian government during the conflict. However, these measures have worsened the humanitarian crisis in the Middle Eastern country, where millions have lost their homes and live in hunger. In recent years, Syria has also faced an economic crisis as the Syrian pound has significantly depreciated. Yet the Assad regime continues to receive support from allies like Russia and Iran, helping it maintain military capabilities. Additionally, the U.S. has imposed sanctions on several Latin American countries, including Venezuela. For the first time in 2005, Washington banned certain individuals from Caracas in response to anti-terrorism and drug policy objections. By 2006, Venezuela was barred from accessing certain military weapons and technologies. However, it was not until 2015 that sanctions became more stringent when President Obama declared a state of emergency and implemented sanctions against officials in Caracas. When Trump took office, these sanctions were expanded, culminating in a ban on all government loans from Venezuela in the U.S., asset seizures, and sanctions against the central bank, blocking transactions with the state oil company, which once provided 95% of Venezuela's foreign exchange. By 2019, the U.S. announced a freeze on all Venezuelan government assets and prohibited its companies from trading with the Maduro administration. Venezuela's GDP fell by more than 30% from 2013 to 2019, resulting in mass emigration of its citizens to the U.S. and other countries across the Americas. The next country is Cuba, which has faced U.S. sanctions for over 6 decades. It all began on October 19, 1960, when the Eisenhower administration issued trade embargoes and prevented Cuba from exporting most products to the U.S. Later, in 1996, the Helms-Burton Act tightened sanctions, making it difficult for foreign businesses to cooperate with Cuba. Under President Obama, the U.S. restored diplomatic relations and eased some trade restrictions. But in 2017, Donald Trump's administration reinstated and tightened these sanctions, even placing Cuba back on the list of state sponsors of terrorism. After decades of blockade, the country's economy has been severely impacted. According to a UN report, Cuba has incurred approximately $130 billion in damages. The ongoing crisis has also led to over 4% of the population choosing to emigrate. In a 2020 report to the UN, Cuba claimed that the total cost of damages from 60 years of U.S. sanctions was $144 billion. The country under the longest sanctions is North Korea, which has faced restrictions since the 1950s after the Korean War. The initial sanctions focused on trade bans and economic aid, after periods of both relaxation and tightening. In 1998, the U.S. designated North Korea as a state sponsor of terrorism. By the 2000s, the U.S. expanded sanctions due to North Korea's nuclear and ballistic missile programs, especially after the successful test of its first nuclear missile in 2006. At this time, not only the U.S. but also the European Union and UN Security Council members expanded new sanctions. The aim of these sanctions was to target oil imports, minerals, finance, and trade across all fronts, both directly and indirectly. Despite this, North Korea continued to test nuclear weapons and develop missile technology. Washington still maintains some humanitarian aid to help address health and food issues in North Korea. Additionally, Myanmar has also been sanctioned by the U.S. due to the military's actions, such as airstrikes on homes, schools, religious sites, and hospitals. They have even committed torture, used civilians as human shields, and committed sexual violence against women and children. The U.S. has strongly condemned the ethnic conflict in Myanmar's civil war. And President Biden quickly imposed sanctions on the military regime by seizing $1 billion in assets. In addition to the aforementioned countries, the Biden administration has imposed sanctions on several others for various reasons. Belarus was sanctioned for election interference and violations of civil rights, as well as increasing support for Russia in the war in Ukraine. The effects of U.S. sanctions are undeniable. as they have often succeeded in stifling the economic development of countries deemed dangerous by the US. However, these actions are not always seen as justifiable, especially when they severely harm innocent civilians. With the power of the world's #1 superpower, US sanctions can trigger economic crises in adversarial nations. This not only diminishes production but also contributes to rising unemployment rates, making life increasingly difficult for ordinary people. Furthermore, sanctions obstruct access to essential goods such as food, energy, and medicine, and even hinder access to humanitarian aid, leading to larger disasters such as disease outbreaks and poverty that can result in death. The most vulnerable among these are women and children, as the sanctions imposed have exemptions, meaning that humanitarian items like food, medicine, and medical supplies are also restricted, due to the stringent sanctions being monitored by multiple agencies and organizations. It has become challenging for citizens to access aid. For example, in North Korea, NGOs report that it took them over a year to transport 16 boxes of beans to Pyongyang. These barriers have led to even greater consequences. According to estimates from Venezuela, the US has indirectly caused the deaths of 40,000 people in 1 year. Sanctions on North Korea are estimated to have resulted in approximately 4,000 civilian deaths in just 2018. Moreover, Syria has seen 9 out of 10 people living in poverty, and 12.4 million people facing food insecurity, which is over half of the population. The direst situation was in Iraq, where in 1990, President Saddam Hussein launched a war against Kuwait but was defeated by a US-led coalition. Since then, Iraq has faced crippling sanctions. From 1990 to 2002, 1.6 million children died from lack of food and medicine, an increase of 7 times compared to before the sanctions. Additionally, more than 1 million children suffered from malnutrition. With the burdens of sanctions, Iraq's economy severely declined. The country, which once thrived due to its massive oil reserves, began to deteriorate post-sanctions, leading to a significant drop in living standards. The average monthly salary fell from $500 to just $10, forcing many to live in poverty. By 2003, the US launched an attack on Iraq and overthrew Saddam Hussein's government. It is evident that sanctions have been effective in this Middle Eastern nation but have brought chaos to its people. Nevertheless, the US will continue to wield its stick to isolate adversarial nations. What do you think about the sanctions imposed by the US? Please leave your comments below. Goodbye, and see you in the next video clip.